Good morning, this is Ms. Jurado, and today I am going to be presenting to you the 2020-2021 Isleta YISD Employee Handbook and Sexual Harassment Training. The PowerPoint is fairly long and I will go through each slide, but I am not going to read it word per word. Anything that is noted in red is what is new to the current school year, and I will take time to discuss it. Please know that if you have any questions or concerns or you're unsure about something, you can always reach out to myself, Mrs. Jeroen, or Mrs. Poblano, and we will be more than happy to go into more detail and make sure that your questions are answered. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and get started. The importance of the employee handbook. Please know that this handbook was provided as a resource to answer any recurring questions that employees have about their employment. It establishes guidelines so that everyone is treated fairly and equitably. It outlines expectations for behavior and potential consequences of that behavior can be both positive and negative. It also communicates district policy regarding employment matters in a brief and concise manner. This document can be useful in a legal defense as well. So the next slide basically talks about equal employment. And in this slide, we just want everybody to know that Isleta YISD does not discriminate against any employee or applicant for employment because of the following characteristics. The new items that were added were sexual orientation and gender identity. Equal employment also tells us that in accordance with Title IX, the district does not discriminate on the basis of sex and is required not to discriminate on the basis of sex in educational programs or activities. The requirement not to discriminate extends to employment. Inquiries about the application of Title IX may be referred to the district's Title IX coordinator, to the Assistant Secretary of Civil Rights of the Department of Education, or to both people. This next slide first talks about your certificates and your license. And basically, it just tells us that employee licensed by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation must notify Human Resources when there is action against or revocation of their license. On the bottom, I don't know my cursor. Yes, I was going to get the pointer. Let's see if that works. Oh, yes, look, the pointer. On the bottom right here, we see that searches. This one talks about searches and alcohol and drug testing. Please know that if we have reasonable suspicion that you are drunk or on drugs, we do have the right to search the employee, okay? And I like this last bullet to know the district may search the employee's personal items and work areas, including district-owned technology service resources, lockers, private vehicles parked on district premises, or work sites, or work sites, or used in district business. Employment. So basically what this says is that the workload and the work schedules are set by your supervisors. Okay. The third bullet states teachers are expected to work a minimum of 40 hours per week, including their daily 30 minutes of duty-free lunch. The last bullet talks about your 450 minutes for conferencing. The next slide talks about overtime compensation. Please, on this part, please know that we hold, I like the second bullet, the employee is responsible for the time he or she clocks in when using the Empl Center and certifies that the hours recorded are accurate and reflect the actual time worked. So please, it's very important on this part that you clock in and you clock out of each day. Outside employment and tutoring. Please know that if you do have a job outside of YISD, you must submit a written request submitted to your supervisor. We cannot pay you if you're getting paid by the other employment, right? You can be taking sick leave for outside consultation or employment is considered fraud. And of course, The last bullet states that employees should not act as vendors during the workday. So we always talk about that because a lot of us sell Scentsy or Avon or something, and you cannot be promoting your sale through the workday. So that's very important to remember. Leaves and absences. A day of personal leave is equivalent to the number of hours per day in an employee's usual assignment, right? Whether you're part-time or full-time. Please know that there are two types of leave. There's non-discretionary and there's discretionary. Basically, non-discretionary is any other leave besides illness, right? So it's important to know that it requires advance notice of 5 days and approval from your supervisor. This last bullet is very important because sometimes we forget about this. Discretionary leave shall not be allowed on the first 5 days or last 5 teaching days of each semester, the day before or after a school holiday, days scheduled for end of semester or end of year exams, days scheduled for state testing, and professional or staff development days. So your supervisor has the right to deny discretionary leave if it occurs on any of these examples that were given. Non-discretionary leave is basically when a person is ill or an immediate family member, to include a spouse, your son, daughter, parents, step-parents, siblings, grandparents, any other person. So this is like illness related. What is new to this is now, due to the coronavirus, we have a Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And basically what this is saying is that qualifying reasons for leave related to COVID-19. So I am going to take the time to read this slide because this is new. And again, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to us. And if we don't have the answers, we will surely contact risk management to guide us to answer your questions. So what this slide is stating is that any employee is entitled to take leave if it is related to the COVID-19. If the employee is unable to work, including unable to telework because the employee has any of the following, and there's 6 items that they listed. The first item says that the employee is subject to the federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation related to COVID-19, has been advised by the healthcare provider to self-quarantine related to COVID-19, is experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and is seeking a medical diagnosis, is caring for an individual subject to an order described in any of the above, or described in Section 1 or Section 2. 5 is caring for his or her child whose school or place of care was closed due to the COVID-19 related reasons, is experiencing any other substantially similar condition specific to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Okay. Paid leave. So the next part talks about paid leave. And then it goes into details, right? Up to 2 weeks. So the district will provide you up to 2 weeks, which is 80 hours. And then the next bullets say 100% of qualifying reasons are listed in numbers 1 and 3. And then the second bullet is 2/3 of qualifying reasons for items 4 and 6. And then the last bullet states that it's up to 2 weeks of paid sick leave and expanded family and medical leave paid, 2/3 of the qualifying reasons for number 5, and then it talks about the dollar amount. A part-time employee is eligible for leave for the number of hours that the employee is normally scheduled to work over that period. And this is called the FFCRA, which refers to the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Leave, this is about leave and absences. So basically what this is telling us is that if you happen to leave the district before your contract ends, they do have the right to reduce the payment amount on your last check. Vacation time, only those individuals employed on the 226 calendar have a 10-day vacation times for the school year. Oops, I think I skipped one. Yes. Did I go back? Yeah. Okay, this next one talks about truancy court. Basically, this is saying that if you are required to attend truancy court for your individual child, it's not considered, it's considered a personal leave, okay? The next one states that it talks about jury duty. So this is red, so I'm going to go ahead and take the time to discuss it. So I know that this never happens to us, right? But something when we are called to jury duty and that it doesn't happen or it's postponed, if you are dismissed before more than half of the day, you are obligated to return to work. Okay, so what does that mean is that you just don't take the whole day off. And I am sure none of us have ever done that. But this time they put it in our handbook just so that we know. So bullet number 1, employees are required to report to work if more than half of the business day remains after the release from jury duty services. So let's say you are called to jury duty at 7:30. And at 8, they say, they are going to reschedule the court for another day. So that means because you were dismissed at 8 a.m., you are obligated to return to work. Okay? So let's say you were at jury duty and they dismissed, you had jury duty in the morning, they were assigning the courts, they sent you guys to lunch, and then you get there at 1 o'clock after lunch and they tell you that your court has been dismissed. At this point, it's 1:30 in the afternoon. Because more of the half day was spent there, you do not need to return to work because it is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You can continue to go about your day. Bullet number 2, the district will not discharge, threaten to discharge, intimidate any regular employee because of juror or grand juror services for the employee's attendance or scheduled attendance in connection with the service in any court of in the United States, right? So we can't hold it against you if it's STAR test and you're called and put on jury duty. Next one talks about religious. The district will reasonably accommodate any employee request for absence for a religious holiday. This slide talks about grievances under policy BDGBA. And basically this says that the board has adopted an orderly process that all employees must follow when bringing formal complaints or grievances. Of course, our goal is to always resolve the complaints in a timely manner. We resolve complaints at the lowest administrative level if possible, and then we have to notify employee relations for timelines and tracking purposes. The following slide states the following are specifically excluded from the grievance policy. So, of course, complaints alleging discrimination, complaints alleging certain forms of harassment, complaints concerning retaliation, and complaints concerning instructional materials. Complaints concerning a commissioned peace officer, complaints concerning the proposed non-renewal of a term contract, or complaints concerning the proposed termination or suspension without pay. This next slide talks about investigations, which goes under policy DIA. So this talks about discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. So, of course, employees shall not engage in any prohibited harassment, including sexual harassment, and this goes in regards to all employees, unpaid interns, student teachers, and students. This slide is still on that same topic, and this is basically stating that if the principal, campus principal, supervisor, district official is the subject of the complaint should be made directly to the superintendent, okay, or the associate superintendents. I'm going to go ahead and read the red bullets because this is the new items for this current school year. Any district employee who believes that he or she has experienced prohibited conduct based on sex, including sexual harassment, or believes that another employee has experienced such prohibited conduct should immediately report the alleged acts. The employee may report the alleged acts to his or her supervisor, the campus principal, the Title IX coordinator, or the superintendent. The district's Title IX coordinator is listed in the EEO section of the employee handbook. Just come to us, guys. We'll always work with you. Now we're going to go into what is sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is any unwanted and unwelcome sexual advances or conduct of a sexual nature, such as requests for sexual favors or other verbal or physical contact of a sexual nature. This policy basically says that sexual harassment is illegal. It's considered unacceptable conduct and will not be tolerated by the district. So our goal is always to identify the problem, stop the behavior, and put preventive measures if possible. So here we're going to talk about intent versus impact. So this one says, I tell a joke but did not intend to offend anyone. Is it sexual harassment? The intent is not relevant in determining whether or not the behavior is sexual harassment. All that matters is the impact of the behavior and of the work environment. So this, guys, is what we always say. We have to just be very, very careful because sometimes and you know your colleagues, sometimes it's okay and it's all nice, fun, and jokes. But if they're having a bad day or if there's conflict within the grade level or within the team, that's when they can take it to the next level. So please be very cautious and make sure that you guys just put the expectations on the table, and just remember that that's not tolerated in the workplace. Is it an inappropriate behavior? So basically what we want you to do is we want to ask yourself, could someone misinterpret my behavior? Is my behavior harmful or harassing? Would I like to be treated this way? Would I like for my family member to be treated this way? Or how would my behavior play on the evening news? So how can we be sure? We always say to do a tire check, right? We need to think before acting, imagine how others might be feeling. Of course, we want to respect one another and exercise common courtesy. There are two types of sexual harassment, right? So something in this one, the quid pro quo, talks about something in exchange for something else, right? So I remember last year when I was giving my training in person, it's like you tell somebody like, I will, if you do this for me, if you go out to dinner with me and treat me to drinks, I will make sure that you don't have to do crossing guard in the morning all year long, right? It's a favor for something else. The supervisor punishes an employee for rejecting the sexual advances. The supervisor offers a benefit to an employee in exchange for a sexual favor. Or the fact that the employee submits to a boss does not mean that the advances were not sexual harassment. There are two types of sexual harassment. The hostile work environment. This occurs when one or more supervisors or co-workers create an atmosphere that unreasonably interferes with an employee's work performance, or they create an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment that it's so uncomfortable that the employee can't do their job. Factors taken into consideration. So when we are doing the investigation, some of the things that we look for is how frequent the conduct occurs, how severe the conduct is the conduct humiliating or threatening, would the conduct interfere with a reasonable person's work performance? If it was unwelcome behavior, and if it based on this standard, a one-time unwelcome behavior will seldom qualify as sexual harassment unless it is extremely severe. So if I make comments to someone and that person doesn't ask me to stop, is my behavior okay? The answer is not necessarily, right? We know that we always have to be aware of our risky behaviors. So what are those risky behaviors, right? So look at like is hubba hubba. Of course, let's talk a little bit about verbal. This is graphic descriptions of pornography. This is making suggestive sounds like whistling or cat calls. Of course, it's sexual or gender based jokes. It's about stories, right? Us telling our stories. It's about calling a person a hunk, babe, or honey. Or it's turning a reply into a sexual comment, right? The nonverbal risky behaviors are staring at someone in a suggestive way, hanging around or following a person, making gestures or sexual that are in a sexual nature. It could also be facial expressions like winking or throwing kisses. And of course, here comes our technology that sometimes always gets us into trouble. It's the cell phone or emailing of pictures, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, and text messages. God, that social media, sometimes it gets us in trouble. The physical component. Here we're talking about invading of personal space, inappropriately touching a person or a person's clothing, restricting or hindering another person's movements, hanging around or following a person, massaging a person's neck or shoulders, or sitting on somebody's lap. It could also be visual, which would include posters, cartoons, drawings, calendars of sexual nature. It could be sexual or derogatory comments about men or women on coffee mugs, hats, or clothing. It's any items not protected by the First Amendment. And then again, here comes technology. The use of cell phones, camera, pictures, jokes, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, and text messages. This is sexual jokes sent through email. So again, Mr. Owen and I have told you all very openly that the technology is what sometimes gets our teachers in trouble. Please, guys, I can't say it over and over again. Please be careful if you have parents on your social media. Parents on your social media, okay? It just takes them seeing a photo and it's spreading, or nowadays maybe it's not you that posted it, but somebody tagged you and it comes up on your page, and then your parents are viewing it. So please, we've told you over and over again, please be cautious if you have parents as your friends on your social media. And you shouldn't even have students on your social media, right? We talked about that as well. On your personal pages, if you have club accounts or club pages, that's totally different. But on your personal pages, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, I think for the most part you have Twitter as your professional social media. But if you have a different Twitter account and you're posting both personal and professional, please be very careful. Like for me personally, guys, I use my Twitter account more professionally. I hardly ever post personal things on my Twitter account. That's my professional account. As to where my Facebook and my Instagram are more my personal. That's where I have my aunts, my friends, that's where I post more personal information, the passing of my grandmother and all of that stuff. I did those on my personal accounts. Do I have some staff members? Yes, I do. I do. But we still need to be very cautious because it could just take one of you that if I post something inappropriate or it offends you, I could get myself in a lot of trouble. So please be careful with that. Okay? What do I do if I'm feeling sexual harassed? Don't ignore the behavior. Please make sure you tell the person their behavior is offensive and tell them to stop, okay? You also need to inform the supervisor, guys. We cannot help you if we do not know what's going on. If it continues, of course, you report it to your supervisor and then we document it. We document the who, the what, the where, and the witnesses. Once you notify the supervisor, it is our obligation to notify anybody we need to if it's that serious for formal complaints of sexual harassment. Always try to resolve the issue in the lowest administrative level, and then supervisors must demonstrate they took action. So we have to make a report, okay? Confidentiality and retaliation. You are entitled to, yes. So if a person is sexual harassed, you are entitled to confidentiality within certain limits. So please know that if an investigation happens, we have to investigate it. We'll try our best to always keep items confidential, but when it's reported, the investigation does need to take place. Texas Educators Code of Ethics and Enforceable Standards. So now we're going to talk about you, the Texas educator. The Texas educator shall comply with standard practices and ethical conducts towards students, professional colleagues, school official, parents, and members of the community, and shall safeguard academic freedom. In maintaining the dignity of the profession, in maintaining the dignity of the profession, shall respect and obey the law, demonstrate personal integrity, and exemplify honesty and good moral character. In accepting a position of public trust, we shall measure the success by the progress of each student toward the realization of his or her potential. Influence the responsibility in the community. Violations of policies and regulations or guidelines, including intentionally making a false claim, offering false statements, or refusing to cooperate with the district's investigation may result in disciplinary action, including termination. Okay, employee conduct and welfare. So the new item here is the first bullet, standard 2.8. The educator shall not initially or knowingly subject a colleague to sexual harassment. The DH local. This is where the employee may not date a former YISD student until the ex-student is, first bullet, at least 21 years of age and has been out of high school for at least 2 years. So please, no dating of students, okay? No. That's no dating of students. You just need to stay, like my sign, stay away from them. Here we're going to talk about the prohibited behavior with students. Of course, romantic and inappropriate social relationships between students and district employees are prohibited. The next part talks about us we're mentoring. Yes, so this is just how these personal relationships start up, right? So it's a student prior to graduation that result in a romantic relationship upon their graduation. And of course, look, it's here. Beware of your Facebook, text messages, Instagram, Snapchat, cell phone calls, okay? Please don't allow students to become involved in your personal life. Play like a grown-up. Guys, so many times, we talk to our kids about our personal life. Please be cautious as to what you tell them on your personal life, okay? That's a no-no. We don't want them to get involved in your personal life. Harassment of students. Any district employee who subjects or receives direct or indirect notices that a student or group of students may have experienced prohibited conduct based on sex, including sexual harassment of a student, shall immediately notify the district's Title IX coordinator, the ADA Section 504 coordinator, or the superintendent, and take any other steps required by the district policy. Here we're going to talk about termination of employment, mandatory reports to the Texas Education Agency. So what will terminate your employment, right? It says any form of sexual or physical abuse of a minor, soliciting or engaging in sexual conduct or a romantic relationship with a student or a minor, possession, transfer, sale, or distribution of a controlled substance, illegal transfer, appropriation or expenditure of district or school property or funds, money, that gets you in trouble, right? Any attempt of fraud, of course, committing a criminal offense. And then the red bullet, it says non-certified employees. The voluntary or involuntary separation of a non-certified employee from the district must be reported to the Division of Investigations at TEA by the superintendent if there is evidence the employee abused or otherwise committed an unlawful act with a student or minor, was involved in a romantic relationship with a student or minor, or solicited or engaged in sexual contact with a student or minor. So that's for our non-certified employees. We didn't have that before, so that's been added. The principal is required to notify the superintendent of uncertified employees' resignations or termination within 7 business days following the alleged incident of misconduct, of abuse of a student, or was involved in a romantic relationship with or solicited or engaged sexual conduct with a student or minor. The superintendent will notify TEA within 7 business days of receiving the report from the principal or of knowing about an employee's resignation or termination following the alleged incident of the misconduct described above. The next part we're going to be talking about, and we're almost done, is reporting suspected child abuse. So the counselors are usually the one that give the child abuse training. Plus, please know the Texas Abuse Hotline. It's stated. This is one where you might want to write down, take a snapshot or something of it. There is the website. It's www.txabusehotline.org. We are required to complete required report for employee relations. If the alleged abuser is an employee, we need to contact employee relations immediately. Employees must coordinate with investigators of the child abuse or neglect. Failure to report child abuse may result in disciplinary procedures, right? And then the red bullet states the offense or failure to report by a professional may be a state jail felony if it is shown the individual intended to conceal the abuse or neglect. Still talks about child abuse. I'm going to go ahead and read the red bullet. Alleged abuse or neglect involving a person responsible for the care, custody, or welfare of the child, including a teacher, must be reported to CPS. Next, we're going to be talking about technology resources, especially now that we're going virtual, right? So let's see. Electronic communications are not confidential and can be monitored by the district at any time. So Mrs. Duran and I spoke to you about this last year, guys. Remember that if you have your cell phone on the YISD wireless network, they have access, or they can get access to your text messages, okay? So please be cautious of that, alrighty? That when you are using the YISD wireless router in the school and your cell phone connects to that, they do have, the district has access to get information if needed. Don't give your password to anyone. Please monitor the student use of devices. This goes with setting up your rituals and routines, guys, on that first week of school. We need to tell parents that we need their help to continue monitoring the use of these devices. Please refrain from using your personal use of computers during the workday. Refrain from personal use of computer during the workday. Yes. Please remember that if you are using the school computer, your teacher computer, be cautious if you're using it for personal use. Okay, guys? Just know that we told you. Okay. The district's technology resources, including its networks, there it is. The district's technologies resources, including its networks, computer system, email accounts, devices connected to its networks, and all district-owned devices used on or off school property are primarily for administrative and instructional purposes. There it is, guys. It's written for you. Okay? The employee shall not use the district's logo or other copyrighted material of the district without express written consent. Yes, you guys, letters that you send out to parents, yeah, I think sometimes it's best for us to see them. If you're going to put something in writing, just be cautious as to what you're sending out, okay? An employee may not share a post in any format, information, videos, or pictures obtained while on duty or on district business unless the employee first obtains written approval from the employee's immediate supervisor. Employees should be cognizant that they have access to information and images that, if transmitted to the public, could violate privacy concerns. So yes, guys, if you are taking a screenshot of your Google Classroom, please make sure the students' names are not coming out. Please make sure that you have permission to use their photo, guys, okay? We got to be very careful. I know we love to share the great things that we do in our classroom, but please be careful with the information that you share. As role models of the district, students, employees are responsible for their public conduct even when they are not acting as district employees. Employees will be held at the same professional standards in their public use of electronic communication as if they are for any other public conduct. Still talking about the code of ethics here. Now we're going to go into the use of electronic communications with students and parents. Employees are prohibited of using electronic communication with students unless an exception has been made in accordance with administrative regulations. This includes email, text messages, instant messages, web-based applications. So yeah, in elementary, guys, we should not be communicating with students on the phone. We need to communicate with parents, okay? We should not be texting students. We should be communicating with the parents. You communicate with students via your chats, in your Google Classroom and stuff like that, but we should not be texting them on their personal cell phone or anything like that. All communication has to go through parents. All staff are required to use school email accounts for all electronic communications with parents. That's the red bullet, guys, okay? That was new. If you are contacting a parent, you have to use your school email account. Communication about school issues through personal email accounts or text messages are not allowed as they cannot be preserved in accordance with the district's record retention policy. Still continuing with communicating with students. Here we're talking about an employee who communicates with a student using text messaging. Okay, those are the protocols. And usually, guys, we do that more for, I see it more done in the high school and the clubs and all of that. So in the elementary school, there's no need for us to be communicating with students via text messages. And then look at the last bullet. No communication shall occur between 9 p.m. and 8 a.m. Okay? That's even Class Dojo, guys. You have to set limits to your parents. Okay, you have to set limits because we have those parents that are going to take advantage of you. Yes, 1 or 2 times is okay, but please don't get your parents into the habit of them being able to contact you, because then when you don't respond back to them, they take it personal, or they used to respond back to me and now they're not. Okay, so make sure that let them know that you will try your best to respond to them, but if they are after hours or on your family time, it can wait till the next business day. An employee who claims an exception based on the social relationship shall provide written consent from the student's parent. A written consent shall include acknowledgement by the parent that the employee has provided the parent with a copy of the protocol. The employee and the student have a social relationship outside of school. The parent understands that the employee's communication with the student are expected from district regulation, exempted from district regulation, and the parent is solely responsible for monitoring the student's electronic communications between the employee and the student. Still on communications, this one talks about the state and the federal laws behind that. The employee shall notify his supervisor in writing with 1 business day if a student engages in an improper electronic communication with the employee. The employee shall describe the form and context of the communication, right? You got to tell us, guys. If it happens, you have to tell us. Public information on private devices. This is new, okay? So let's see. Employees shall not maintain district information on privately owned devices. Any district information must be forwarded or transferred to the district to be preserved. The district will take responsible efforts to obtain public information in compliance with the Public Information Act. Efforts may include a verbal or written directive or remote access to direct owned devices and services. This is the use. This slide talks about tobacco products and e-cigarette use. Right? Let's see. The state law prohibits smoking or using tobacco products. This includes all buildings, playground areas, parking facilities, used for athletics. Employees who are arrested. Okay, so let's see. Employees shall notify their supervisor or employee relations, within 3 calendar days of the arrest. Okay, so if you get arrested, you have to let us know. The supervisor shall immediately notify employee relations. Failure to notify within 3 days is grounds of disciplinary action to include termination. I'm going to read the red bullets right here. The district shall discharge any employee who has been convicted of or placed on deferred adjudication community supervision if an offense requiring the regulation as a sex offender or convicted of a felony under Title V code if the victim was a minor. The last bullet, if the offense is more than 30 years before the date of the person's employment began, or the person satisfied all terms of the court order entered on conviction, the requirement to discharge does not apply. Fraud, this talks about fraud and just using money inappropriately. All districts should act with integrity, of course, due to the financial resources. Fraud and financial impropriety include the following. Okay, you cannot forge things, guys. Forgery or unauthorized alteration of any document having to do with checks, bank drafts, any other financial documents, misappropriate of funds, handling of money, prohibiting as a result knowledge of district information and activities. Guys, with this one, what worries me is that Right now, there are so many ways that we can send money to each other, right? We send it through Cash App, we send it through Apple Pay. Please, you should not be receiving money from parents, okay? Especially if you're a club, like if you have a club, like you got to be very, very cautious, guys, because those accounts are linked to your personal account, and that's where you can get into a lot of trouble, okay? So please don't put yourself in that situation. Again, this is talking about the fraud. Conflict of interest. Employees are required to disclose in writing to the district any situation that creates a potential conflict of interest with proper discharge of assigned duties and responsibility or creates a potential conflict of interest with the best interest of the district. This includes personal financial interest, business interest, or any other obligation or relationship, non-school employment. Employee conduct and welfare. This talks about gifts. Employees may not accept gifts or favors that could influence or be construed to influence the employee's discharge of assigned duties. Charitable contributions, cell phone use. Personal cell phones are not to be used during scheduled work hours unless it is a district-related business matter. Cell phones may be used during lunch breaks and designated times and breaks. So I know a lot of you guys communicate to parents through Class Dojo, and that's why you say you have your phone. But you got to be very cautious, guys. You got to be very cautious because it's very easy to start off like that, and then you start checking your Twitter, and then you start getting onto your Snapchat. So just be careful, okay? Let's see. Still talking about employee conduct and welfare. Dress and grooming. Even though we are virtual, guys, please take a bath. Please be presentable. I know you're thinking that you are only communicating with your students, but please know that most likely an adult is listening to you on the other side of that computer. So we expect you to be appropriate and professional, virtual learning or face-to-face. Additional standards may be established by the supervisor. Personal, please comb your hair, wash your face. If you went out the night before, please make sure you don't have your mascara, your eyeliner under your eyes and stuff. Clean yourself up and be ready to work. The above professional requirements are expected to be adhered to even when teaching or working remotely. Of course, they had to add it. Possession of firearms and weapons. So we spoke, this was new to us from last year. Employees, visitors, and students, including those with a license to carry a concealed handgun, are prohibited from bringing firearms, knives, clubs, or other prohibited weapons onto school premises or any grounds or buildings where the school-sponsored activity takes place. A person, including an employee who holds a license to carry a handgun, may transport or store a handgun or other firearm or ammunition in a locked vehicle in a parking lot, garage, or other district-provided parking area, provided the handgun or firearm and ammunition is properly stored and not in plain view. Student issues. So what's new here? Students should never be assigned to grade another student's work to ensure confidentiality is respected. Guys, the days of kids grading other kids' work, gone. We don't do that anymore, okay? Please, please, please. The kids' filing of papers should not happen because that allows them to see the other kids' grades. So, I mean, I know we're not face-to-face right now, but when we get back to school, please don't fall into your old habits, okay? Always take precaution to maintain the confidentiality of student records. That goes back to FERPA. Parent, and guys, this also goes into when you guys are talking about kids, especially my SPED kids, okay? You should not be discussing a SPED student with anybody who does not have direct contact with that student. So please be cautious as to what you're stating. Last year, guys, when we had when the dads came in, the watchdog dads, we have to be cautious of what we're saying when you're making copies, okay? When you're in the teacher workroom, a lot of you guys were having conversations with your colleagues. When you're making copies, it's your conference period, you're getting ready, and little did you know that the dads are getting their coffee in there and they are listening to everything you're saying. So please, please be cautious of that. Parent and student complaints, we do require you to resolve them timely. Resolve at the lowest administrative level possible, if possible. Only designated employees may administer prescription medications to students, right? And remember that we never recommend that a student use that the student needs to be on medication, or that the student employees are never to attempt to diagnose a student. We never tell a parent, oh, you should put your child on medication, or I think you need to take your child to the doctor because he has ADHD. We never do that, guys, okay? Be cautious what you're texting, what you're saying online. It can be recorded, okay? So be very careful with that. Bullying, of course, please know all employees are required to report student complaints of bullying, to include cyberbullying. Discipline, we'll go into discipline a little bit more detailed, but education, standard 3.2, the educator shall not intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly treat a student or minor in a manner that affects or endangers the learning, right? We never want to be rude, disrespectful, or threatening to our students. Okay, this is new, scope and sequence. Let's see. If a teacher determines that students need more or less time in a specific area to demonstrate proficiency in the TEKS for that subject and grade level, the district will not penalize the teacher for not following the district scope and sequence. So let's talk about that a little bit. Okay, what this is saying is that we cannot write you up or do something if you feel that your students need more time on a specific TEK, or you need to continue teaching, okay? However, we can provide you the support. So look at the next bullet. The district may take appropriate action if a teacher does not follow the district scope and sequence based on documented evidence of a deficiency in the classroom instruction. This documentation can be obtained through observations and documented by a third party, which is like our instructional coaches and stuff like that, guys, okay? But please know, you know us here. We're always here to work with you. If you're falling behind, just come talk to us. We'll work with you, but we're always trying our best to stay on track and meet deadlines. Yay, and that's it. We're done. So I am going to upload some questions that you need to answer. They're just 10 questions based on this PowerPoint. Please use it to answer the questions. And then if you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you so much and have an amazing, amazing day.